In 1988, the carpenter's workshop on the Harewood estate was being cleared. It had long been a store for all that was damaged or broken. But beneath the rubble of ages, an incredible discovery was made: rolls of wallpaper. A wallpaper that had been made in China in the 18th century and that had travelled across the world to Harewood to be hung in 1769. 239 years later, the house curator has supervised the restoration of the paper to enable it to be rehung once more in celebration of China at Harewood.
To select a conservator for this kind of project obviously is a very specialist job. Really, there are very few people in the country who can actually do this kind of project. One of those was, in fact, Alison McDermott. Now, one of the reasons we actually went back to her was because she was actually called in when the paper was first discovered, so she had already seen the wallpaper and did have a history with it. So it was very logical to bring her in for the second time and get it involved again.
We've taken off any of the surface dirt off this particular paper, and now we're going to actually wash or we're going to sort of sweat out the impurities in the paper. This basically softens the actual adhesive and means that we can take off the backing. This is actually in very good condition in most cases. This has actually been protected, and that's why the colours are still so vibrant.
The first time I saw the paper was probably now about 20 years ago, and there was this absolutely enormous roll covered in linen and paper, and we opened it up, and as we cleared away the debris we discovered this extraordinary, beautiful jewel-like paper. And usually they were made and hung so that they could be removed, used elsewhere, or stored away as if they had been antique objects, and clearly that's what happened at Harewood. One could immediately recognise that the paper was Chinese because of the use of these fabulous colours such as azurite and malachite and the cochineal reds that were of a richness and brilliance that we had never seen in this country, nor did we really have access to at that period.
One of the most satisfying parts of the process is actually the actual hanging of the wallpaper. This is when you actually get to see the whole room in context, after just seeing the room in individual sheets, and you get to actually recreate a room that hasn't existed for some period of time. We're just using watercolours. This is actually it's basically minimal intervention. We're not actually applying paint as such. We're using a wash, so we're actually just applying a very, very small amount of paint in solution, so it just sort of takes out the blemishes.
The paper was certainly made in the area around what was then Canton in China, and it will have come back via the East India Company, probably in the 1760s or possibly slightly earlier. Now, it's interesting that the Lassells family have a connection with the East India Company. Edwin, who is building Harewood in the 1760s and 1770s, his youngest brother Henry was actually a captain on one of the East India ships, so it is possible that Henry actually brought the wallpaper back for Edwin. The paper was first hung in what is known as the chintz bedroom, and it was hung in there in 1769. We know that for a fact because the archives tell it. And it was hung by Chippendale's men, because Chippendale didn't just make furniture, he was also refurbishing a lot of the rooms. When the wallpaper was first hung in the chintz bedroom, that room is slightly shorter than the room that we're using now, which is the east bedroom. So now that we've installed it in the east bedroom, we've had to actually add a little bit of sky at the top. And the process that they're going through now is to add to that. So we've got that extra bit of sky at the top, just so the paper blends through to the whole height of the room. I don't feel it affects the authenticity, because when the paper first came over from China, they finished painting at the hill level, and it was actually Chippendale's men who added the sky. And it was very traditional to do that, because obviously you didn't always know what the dimensions of the room were going to be. So we're taking an 18th century tradition and just redoing it again in the 21st century.
We're actually just retouching some of the scuff marks and some of the actual damage on the wallpaper that's occurred through storage over time and general just wear and tear of where they were rolled together. This is just done on situ, so we know with light conditions and things that it actually blends in. We can only do so much in the studio just to sort of work it out. But on site we actually do a majority of join lines where the actual paper doesn't marry through trimming from the past.
It's amazing to take something like these rolls of wallpaper, which were literally just in storage, and to be able to get them back up on the walls where people can see them and put everything back with it, the conservation of the furniture, the refurbishment of bed, the printing of the chintz. It's been an amazing project from beginning to end. We didn't put the wallpaper back into the original room because the room itself isn't actually available for the public to see. The wallpaper itself is hand-painted onto mulberry paper. It depicts scenes of daily life in China in a very romanticised way.
Now the paper has been cleaned, it is extraordinary. I think it is probably one of the best examples of Chinese wallpaper in the world. The colours are wonderful, the quality of painting is extraordinary, and I think what Harewood has is just something so wonderful and unique. It's very, very fortunate that it survived.
It's really exciting for both myself and for Harewood because we're managing to put back the wallpaper and then to reinstate all the furniture that actually belongs with it. It's the first time in nearly a decade that we've managed to do this at Harewood, so it's a wonderful and exciting project.